Hey guys, tonight we drift into the soft, humid air of the Mississippi floodplain, where the grass whispers in the wind and the horizon is punctuated by shapes that don't quite belong. You squint in the twilight, and there it is. A broad, sloping mound rising from the flat land like a giant turtle that decided to nap for a few centuries. Welcome to the world of Cahokia, the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. And don't worry, you probably won't survive a single day here. Not because of battle or famine, but because of mosquitoes the size of small raisins and a complete lack of air conditioning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my sleepy travelers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a river plain that stretches wide, green, and wet in all directions. The Mississippi, that big, muddy ribbon of history, snakes not far away, and its many side channels and wetlands create a patchwork of shimmering water and soggy fields. At first glance, it's just a peaceful wilderness, until your eyes adjust to the landforms. All around you, the earth seems to swell in places, forming shapes too deliberate to be natural. You trudge through the tall grass, dragonflies darting around your head, and the occasional frog complaining at your intrusion. As the mist curls up from the wet ground, the first mound comes into full view. It's not just a bump in the earth. This thing is massive, bigger than some apartment complexes you've seen. And yet it's just dirt, carefully piled by human hands 1,000 years ago. This is Monk's Mound, the heart of Cahokia. Mainstream historical fact time. Cahokia was the largest city in North America around 1050 to 1200 CE, housing perhaps 15,000 to 20,000 people at its peak. To put that in perspective, it was bigger than London at the same time, which makes you think twice about the phrase lost city. You take a step closer, running your hand along the grassy slope. The soil feels soft but dense, like it's holding centuries of secrets. And here comes the quirky tidbit. Archaeologists believe these mounds were made basket by basket. Imagine thousands of people hauling dirt in woven baskets, slowly creating these colossal earthworks without the help of wheels, beasts of burden, or, tragically, espresso machines. As you circle the mound, the wind carries the smell of river mud and sweet grass. You notice a few birds perched at the top, silhouetted against the fading light. Historians still argue whether this place was primarily a political capital, a religious center, or a combination of both. Whatever it was, it commanded attention, not just with its size, but with the sheer audacity of reshaping the land into symbols of power. You pause for a moment, feeling small and maybe just a little sleepy. The hum of crickets begins to rise, and somewhere in the distance, water splashes, maybe a heron landing, maybe a beaver doing whatever beavers do at twilight. You can almost hear the faint echo of ancient footsteps, the rustle of woven mats, the clink of stone tools shaping the past. In this quiet, you realize that Cahokia isn't just a set of mounds. It's a ghost of ambition, a story written in mud and grass, whispering through the centuries as the river keeps flowing past. Section 2. You wake to the damp smell of river air, the morning mist still curling over the flat expanse like a lazy ghost. The sun rises slow and orange, painting the grassy mounds with soft light. It's quiet, except for the low hum of insects and the distant call of a bird that clearly doesn't care how historically important this place is. You take a few careful steps toward the base of Monk's Mound, the largest earthen pyramid in the Western Hemisphere. Its slope rises steep and steady, with multiple terraces like giant steps for a god who forgot his ladder. Climbing it in sandals, or worse, barefoot, is a commitment. And yet, 1,000 years ago, this was daily life for Cahokia's leaders, priests, and workers. Mainstream historical fact: Monk's Mound is over 100 feet tall and covers more than 14 acres at its base. That's like taking the footprint of a small Walmart supercenter and stacking it into a dirt skyscraper. Built entirely by hand, it required millions of baskets of soil, each carefully layered to prevent collapse. As you start your imaginary climb, your hand brushes the earth. It feels damp and alive, breathing with the morning dew. You imagine the workers here, sweating, bent over, hauling heavy baskets while the summer sun roasted them like human corn on the cob. They didn't have steel shovels or carts. They had determination, a deep belief in their leaders, and possibly some very sore shoulders. Halfway up, you pause to catch your breath. Below, the world looks like a prehistoric quilt. Patches of forest, wetlands, and narrow fields where corn sways in the wind. Historians still argue whether the top of the mound had a grand temple, a council house, or perhaps the residence of a powerful chief known as the Great Sun. Whatever it was, it loomed over the entire city, a reminder that you were always being watched by leaders, gods, or just very judgmental pigeons. Here comes your quirky tidbit for the morning climb. During excavations, archaeologists found that the mound wasn't built in one go. It was expanded in stages, sometimes after heavy rains caused slides or collapses. In other words, this giant monument occasionally behaved like a stubborn mud cake, forcing the builders to redo their work. And yet, they kept going, creating a symbol that could be seen for miles. When you finally imagine yourself standing on the top, the view is breathtaking. The Mississippi glitters in the distance. Dozens of smaller mounds dot the land like sleeping animals. Straight paths connect open plazas, and smoke rises from small fires where families start their day. It feels like standing at the heart of a living city that knows it's important, but doesn't realize that one day the world will forget it existed. A soft wind brushes your face, carrying the smell of earth and wood smoke. You feel the weight of history settle on your shoulders, as if the mound itself is whispering, "Remember me," even when the world moves on. Section 3. You descend the slope of Monk's Mound slowly, your feet sinking into the damp grass as the city below spreads before your sleepy imagination. The morning haze is lifting now, revealing Cahokia's sprawling plazas and neat geometric layouts. For a city that left no stone walls or marble statues, it has a quiet, organized beauty. At the heart of it all is a wide-open plaza, an earthen stage for the daily life of thousands. You picture yourself stepping onto that open ground, surrounded by the sounds of a city waking up 1,000 years ago. Children run barefoot, their laughter mixing with the thuds of corn being pounded into meal. Dogs, half companions, half early security alarms, dart between houses made of wood and thatch. Mainstream historical fact. Cahokia wasn't just one big mound. It was an urban complex with about 120 mounds spread across 6 square miles. Archaeologists classify them into platform mounds for buildings, conical mounds for burials, and ridgetop mounds whose purposes are still debated. These open plazas, like the one you're standing in now, were carefully leveled to serve as gathering spaces for markets, games, and ceremonies. The air here smells like smoke and wet grass, with a faint hint of fish carried from the river. A woman stoops by a fire, roasting squash and beans, the famous Three Sisters crops that fueled civilizations across North America. You feel the warmth of the fire against the cool morning air, and imagine the taste of roasted corn, a comfort food as old as the city itself. And now for the quirky tidbit. Cahokia's residents played a game called Chunky, which involved rolling a stone disc across the plaza, while players hurled spears to land as close as possible to where the disc would stop. It sounds simple, but it was a wildly popular pastime. And according to some historians, a way to settle disputes or even gamble fortunes. Picture it. The whole city gathering to watch someone toss a spear at a rolling rock. And somehow it feels like the Super Bowl of 1100 CE. As you wander through the plaza, you notice rows of wooden posts arranged in circles off to the side. These are reconstructions of what archaeologists call wood henges, enormous timber circles that might have functioned like solar calendars. Historians still argue whether they were purely ceremonial, astronomical tools, or both. Standing in the middle, you feel a shiver as you imagine the sunrise aligning perfectly with a specific post, marking the solstice. The rhythm of the city surrounds you. Footsteps on packed earth, the soft slap of clay as someone molds a new pot, the distant splash of a canoe on a nearby waterway. The longer you stand in this imaginary plaza, the easier it is to feel the pulse of Cahokia as if it never really left. The land hums with memory, and the breeze carries whispers of 1,000 market trades, festival songs, and quiet prayers to the sky. Section 4. You drift further into Cahokia's daily rhythm, letting your feet follow the soft, packed dirt paths that connect the homes and work areas. The city is awake now. Smoke rises from cooking fires, and the low murmur of voices floats through the morning air. As you pass between clusters of thatched houses, you find yourself drawn toward a busy open space, a market alive with color, smell, and chatter. This is where the heart of Cahokia beats strongest. Imagine stalls lined with woven mats displaying maize piled like tiny golden pyramids, beans in little clay bowls, and shiny squash that look like nature's own lanterns. A fisherman squats by a basket full of river mussels, their shells glinting in the sun. Someone else fans smoke over racks of drying fish, and the scent mingles with the earthy smell of wet clay pots stacked nearby. Mainstream historical fact. Cahokia's residents relied heavily on the Mississippi River and its backwaters for food, catching fish, mussels, and waterfowl. They also farmed corn, beans, and squash, a trio known as the Three Sisters, which provided a balanced diet and could be stored to feed the city through the seasons. This combination supported a dense urban population long before European contact. You take a step closer to a trader's blanket and notice something that doesn't belong to the local riverbanks. A necklace made of Gulf Coast seashells. You pick it up, the smooth, pale surface cool against your fingers. This is your quirky tidbit. Cahokia was a hub in a massive trade network that stretched across the continent. Traders carried shells from the Gulf, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from as far as the Rocky Mountains. Imagine the stories these objects could tell, carried by hand or canoe across thousands of miles. As you linger, you hear the rhythmic clatter of wooden pestles as women grind maize into meal. A child toddles past, clutching a half-eaten piece of roasted fish, followed by a dog that looks suspiciously like it's hoping for the other half. Chickens don't exist here yet. This is pre-contact America. But ducks quack from the edge of a nearby pond. Historians still argue about the organization of Cahokia's economy. Was this market open to everyone, or controlled tightly by elites? Were commoners freely trading goods, or were priests and chiefs orchestrating exchanges to maintain their power? No one really knows, but standing here, listening to the low buzz of human life, you feel the balance of community and control in the air. A breeze carries the scent of roasted fish and damp earth, and the sunlight catches the edge of a copper ornament hanging from a stall. It gleams briefly, then disappears as a trader tucks it away, wary of onlookers. This was a city that thrived not just on food and shelter, but on the movement of ideas, materials, and ambitions. As you leave the market behind, your hands brushing tall stalks of drying corn, you hear a distant drumbeat calling you toward something larger, toward ceremony, toward the center of a life you can only glimpse from the edge of history. Section 5. You follow the faint drum beats to the edge of a wide plaza, where towering timber posts rise from the earth like a circle of silent sentinels. This is Woodhenge, Cahokia's strange wooden calendar, where the city's spiritual life touches the sky. The morning light stretches long shadows across the grass, and you step carefully between the posts, feeling the weight of the centuries settle around you. The air here is different, still heavy with dew and tinged with the smoke of far-off fires. You tilt your head and see how the posts line up with the sun's slow climb. The largest one, painted a deep red that's faded in your imagination, marks the summer solstice. As the sun inches into place, the drums quiet, and a small group of figures steps into the circle. Mainstream historical fact. Archaeologists believe Woodhenge functioned as a solar calendar, much like Stonehenge in England. By observing the rising sun against specific post alignments, Cahokians could track solstices, equinoxes, and agricultural cycles. This knowledge allowed them to predict seasons for planting and harvesting, vital for a city relying on maize. Your quirky tidbit arrives as the sun kisses the horizon, Some evidence suggests these wooden circles weren't just calendars. They were ceremonial stages. Imagine hundreds of people gathered at dawn, wrapped in furs or woven blankets, watching priests greet the sunrise with chants and offerings. A child might cry from the cold, a dog might shake off the morning mist, but otherwise the whole plaza would hold its breath. Historians still argue whether these rituals were purely agricultural or deeply spiritual. Were the priests simply farmers with better math, or intermediaries between earth and sky? Either way, the air carries a charge of significance, the kind that makes the hair on your neck rise even 1,000 years later. You picture a priest in a robe of woven river cane fibers, holding up a carved wooden effigy as the first golden ray touches his face. Around him, the people kneel, heads bowed. The drums resume softly, a heartbeat for a city that believes the sun itself is watching. The wind shifts, carrying the smell of the Mississippi, muddy and alive, and the distant call of a crane echoes through the valley. You step out of the circle slowly, as if leaving the sacred geometry might break some invisible thread. Behind you, the posts stand unmoving, recording the sky's language for anyone patient enough to listen. Walking back toward the plaza, you notice how the city has arranged itself around these cycles. Homes, paths, and mounds form a quiet choreography, as if the people of Cahokia lived their lives in rhythm with the sun and the river. It's a harmony that feels almost musical, and yet you can sense that not every note was peaceful. The drums fade again, replaced by the rustle of cornstalks and the soft pad of your feet on packed earth. Somewhere behind you, the wood henge posts stand in perfect, timeless formation, watching over a city that has yet to see its own shadow of decline. Section 6. You wander away from the solemn posts of Woodhenge, your feet leading you along a dirt path that curves between fields of corn and shallow wetlands. The air grows warmer, and the city hums with life now. Wooden homes with thatched roofs cluster in small neighborhoods, smoke curling lazily from cooking fires. Dogs bark at your passing, and children chase each other, leaving small footprints in the soft earth. Then you notice the outsiders. A pair of traders approaches, leading canoes up a side channel of the Mississippi, their arms laden with goods that shimmer in the sunlight. One carries a bundle of long, glossy obsidian blades, black as night, sharp as a warning. Another has a necklace strung with pink and white seashells, glinting like little pieces of ocean trapped in the river valley. Mainstream historical fact. Cahokia was a hub in a vast trade network that reached across North America. Archaeologists have uncovered copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, and obsidian from the Rockies. The city wasn't isolated. It was the beating heart of a continent-spanning exchange. Your quirky tidbit catches your eye near the canoes. A trader proudly holds up a ceremonial pipe carved in the shape of a bird. Pipes like these were more than just tools for smoking. They were sacred objects, often used in rituals or as symbols of status. Imagine the quiet pride of bringing a gift from hundreds of miles away, knowing it might end up in the hands of Cahokia's rulers. Historians still argue about the social fabric that made this network possible. Was Cahokia the commanding center of a regional empire, extracting tribute from neighbors? Or was it more like a vibrant market city where trade flowed freely, powered by mutual need and occasional diplomacy? The artifacts suggest both stories could be true, depending on who held the goods and who told the tale. As you continue along the path, the traders call out to a small crowd near the plaza. Children gather first, drawn by the glitter of the copper and the rare colors of distant shells. Adults arrive next, examining the goods, pointing, bartering in low tones. A man runs a finger along the edge of an obsidian blade, then pulls it back quickly, shaking his hand, sharp enough to draw a drop of blood with just a careless touch. The scent of river mud and warm reeds fills your nose as a gentle breeze ripples the water. You crouch near one of the canoes and notice it's been hollowed from a single tree trunk, polished smooth by hands and river alike. The traders unload their goods onto woven mats, and soon the sounds of bargaining rise. A mix of laughter, hand gestures, and the soft clinking of beads and tools. In the distance, Monk's Mound looms, silent and steady, watching this little moment of exchange unfold. The city lives on connection, paths stretching outward like invisible threads to the gulf, the lakes, the plains. And for a fleeting second, you feel the pulse of a continent moving through this muddy floodplain, a heartbeat made of corn, copper, stone, and human ambition. Section 7. You leave the bustle of trade behind and drift toward the central plaza, where the city's energy shifts from work to worship. At the far edge, stairs of packed earth climb to the top of a wide, flat mound, a platform that seems to scrape the sky. The air feels heavier here, like it's holding its breath, and the faint smell of smoldering wood reaches your nose long before you reach the summit. The slope is steep, and as you climb, your legs ache in sympathy with the countless workers who once hauled baskets of dirt to build this sacred space. When you finally reach the top, the view takes your breath away. Below, the plaza stretches wide and orderly, a canvas of earth shaped by human hands. Monk's Mound looms in the distance, and the river glints like a polished snake under the afternoon sun. Mainstream historical fact. Cahokia's platform mounds supported temples, council houses, and elite residences. They weren't burial mounds like those of some earlier cultures. They were stages for power, literally lifting leaders and priests above the rest of the city. At the center of this mound, a simple wooden structure stands. Its walls are made of woven mats and mud plaster, but to the Cahokians, it's the house of the divine. Smoke curls from a small fire pit, and the rhythmic beat of drums echoes faintly from somewhere below. You imagine a priest emerging from the shadows, feathers trailing from his hair, his face painted with white clay. He raises his hands to the sky, and the people below fall silent. Here's your quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have found evidence of large feasts and offerings on these mound tops. Animal bones, charred corn, and broken ceremonial objects suggest that rituals often ended in community meals or symbolic destruction, breaking items to send them to the spirit world. Imagine a celebration where your favorite bowl gets smashed on purpose because that's how you invite the gods to dinner. Historians still argue about the exact nature of Cahokia's leadership. Was there a single paramount chief ruling as a kind of divine king, or a council of elite families sharing power? The presence of large mounds and elaborate ceremonies points to hierarchy, but the silence of history leaves room for mystery. The wind catches your hair as you stand at the edge of the platform, looking down at the people gathering below. Women carry baskets of maize and squash. Men bring fish and firewood. Children cling to their mothers' skirts, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. The drums grow louder, and the plaza becomes a living heartbeat. You close your eyes and feel the vibration through your feet. The chant rises slowly, carried by hundreds of voices, and for a moment you're standing between worlds, between earth and sky, past and present. Then a sudden breeze shifts the smoke, and the smell of charred corn and wet clay reminds you that, for all its grandeur, Cahokia was a city built by human hands and human hopes. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows from the mound across the plaza. Below, life continues. Traders haggle, dogs bark, and smoke trails lazily from cooking fires. But up here, the air stays sacred, heavy with memory, and soft enough to carry you into dreams. Section 8. The air cools as the sun tilts westward, and a faint unease creeps into Cahokia's calm rhythm. You wander down from the sacred mound, feeling the packed earth firm under your bare feet, and notice something subtle. Patches of land stripped of trees, stumps poking like broken teeth against the horizon. The city's hunger for wood has left its mark. As you drift along a shallow stream, dragonflies skimming the water's surface, you picture the demands of this thriving metropolis. Thousands of people need timber for houses, firewood, palisades, and the great ceremonial posts like those at Woodhenge. Slowly, the forests recede, and when the rains come heavy, the bare ground no longer holds firm. Mainstream historical fact. Cahokia likely faced environmental strain from deforestation, flooding, and overuse of nearby farmland. Archaeologists have found evidence of periodic flooding in the lowlands and layers of silt that suggest the land was struggling to keep up with human ambition. The quirky tidbit shows up in the form of a sound, a distant, squelchy step. Imagine a Cahokian farmer trudging through mud that was once fertile cornfield, now waterlogged and stubborn. He curses softly in a language long forgotten and tries to lift a foot without losing a sandal. Farming near a floodplain was a blessing for centuries, until the blessing turned into muck. Historians still argue about the exact causes of Cahokia's decline. Was it environmental stress alone? Did social tensions erupt as resources grew scarce? Or did disease, brought in directly through early trade routes, creep in like an invisible thief? The silence of the mounds keeps their secrets. You walk past a cluster of homes and notice the signs of strain. Smoke rises, but the air smells different. Less of cooking, more of dampness and decay. A woman scrubs a clay pot with river sand while her child clings to her hip. A man carries a basket of wood with fewer logs than before, glancing nervously at the darkening sky. The plaza is quieter now. A group of elders sits in a circle, voices low, while a dog noses through the dirt for scraps. Somewhere in the distance, a drum beats slowly, not the jubilant pulse of ritual, but a somber rhythm like the city itself is holding its breath. The wind shifts, bringing a faint scent of stagnant water and crushed grass. You can almost hear the land groan under the weight of human need, a whisper that says nothing lasts forever. You pause by the edge of a half-flooded field and look back at Monk's Mound. Its green slopes glow in the last sunlight, still magnificent, still proud. But below, the city is changing. In the soft evening light, it's hard to tell whether Cahokia is thriving or quietly beginning to unravel. Section 9. Night drifts in over the Mississippi floodplain, and the once busy city feels quieter than it should. You walk through the open plaza where laughter and the clatter of trade once filled the air, and now your footsteps sound louder than they have all day. The sky is painted with streaks of purple and deep blue, and the first stars blink awake above the silhouette of Monk's Mound. Houses sit dark, their thatched roofs glistening with dew. Smoke rises from fewer fires than before, and the plaza is almost empty. A single dog trots across the packed earth, nose low to the ground, tail flicking in the dim light. You can hear frogs croaking from the nearby wetlands, as if nature is slowly reclaiming the soundtrack of this place. Mainstream historical fact. By around 1350 CE, Cahokia was largely abandoned. The population, which may have peaked at 15,000 to 20,000 people, dwindled to almost nothing over the course of a century. When European explorers arrived much later, they found the mounds, but no city, no thriving market, just the quiet skeleton of a once great center. Your quirky tidbit drifts into your imagination in the form of a sound. A hollow, eerie rattle as the wind moves through the woodhenge posts. Archaeologists have noted that some posts were likely left to rot in place, slowly leaning and falling as the city emptied. Picture a wooden circle standing watch over a silent city, each creak of timber like a soft farewell. Historians still argue about why the people left. Environmental stress, social unrest, and regional conflicts are all possibilities. Some suggest that flooding and failed crops forced families to migrate to safer ground. Others believe internal political struggles, perhaps tied to the city's rigid social structure, unraveled the community from within. You step past an abandoned cooking fire, cold ash crunching softly under your feet. A basket sits nearby, tipped on its side, its woven reeds fraying in the damp night air. It feels like the people have just stepped away. There are no signs of catastrophic destruction, no scorched ruins or toppled walls. Cahokia simply exhaled its last breath and faded into the background of the river's eternal song. The night grows colder. You pull an imaginary cloak tighter around your shoulders and look toward the largest mound one last time. Fireflies flicker near its base, tiny sparks of life dancing around a monument that will outlast its makers. You hear the distant call of a heron over the water and the soft sigh of wind through the empty plaza. Standing in that quiet, you feel the weight of time settle over you. A city that fed thousands, built earth into mountains, and carved calendars into timber now belongs to crickets, frogs, and the endless whisper of the Mississippi. History has pressed the mute button, and all that's left is the echo of footsteps you can almost, but not quite, hear. Section 10. Dawn breaks over an empty Cahokia, soft and golden, spilling across mounds that now rise like grassy islands in a sea of silence. You step into the plaza where the morning market once bloomed with color and noise. Today, the only movement is the ripple of dew-soaked grass and a single crow hopping along a roof beam that will collapse in the next storm. It's as if the city paused mid-breath and never exhaled again. You drift past the remnants of what used to be home, collapsed thatch roofs, the faint outline of post holes in the dirt, and broken bits of pottery half swallowed by soil. The air is still and damp, carrying the scent of river mud and wet leaves. Mainstream historical fact. By the time Europeans explored the Mississippi Valley, Cahokia had been abandoned for over a century. Early settlers and explorers in the 1600s and 1700s were stunned by the size of the mounds, which they couldn't imagine had been built by native peoples. For years, myths claimed a lost race built them, until archaeology confirmed their Mississippian origin. Here's your quirky tidbit. Early settlers often treated the mounds as convenient landfills or farmland. Some farmers actually plowed and planted crops right on top of these sacred earthworks. Imagine tossing your corn seeds into a 1,000-year-old ceremonial platform, completely unaware you're gardening on a monument. Historians still argue how much of Cahokia's knowledge and culture survived after the city's decline. Some descendants likely carried traditions to other Mississippian towns. While the city itself faded into myth, the people weren't gone from the earth. But their great experiment in urban living ended here. You wander toward the edge of the site where forest and wetland press in, imagining the first settlers stumbling upon these mounds. To them, it must have felt like walking into a riddle. No marble ruins, no carved inscriptions, just green hills that didn't belong. One early visitor described the landscape as a city of ghosts, and as the wind sighs through the grass, you understand exactly what he meant. The river glimmers in the distance, same as it has for 1,000 years, its muddy waters carrying away the memory of trade, ceremony, and laughter. Your footsteps crunch softly in the dew as you leave the plaza behind, knowing the city is now fully asleep, and yet somehow it watches you go. Section 11. Centuries pass in the blink of a dream, and now you drift through Cahokia as it appears to curious explorers and archaeologists. The year is somewhere in the 1800s, and the mounds are overgrown, their once crisp shapes softened by grass and small trees. You follow a dirt path as a man in a wide-brimmed hat and worn boots pokes at the earth with a shovel. He looks up at you as if to say, "What is this place?" But he can't hear your answer. The air smells of warm soil and crushed weeds. A few cows graze near the base of a mound, oblivious to the fact that their pasture was once a sacred plaza. Farmers have cut into some of the smaller mounds to level their fields, and in a few places, the earth shows layers, bands of soil like a cake baked by human hands centuries ago. Mainstream historical fact. Archaeological investigations of Cahokia began in the 19th century, revealing that the mounds were deliberately constructed. Layers of basket-carried dirt, traces of wooden structures, and buried artifacts confirmed that Native Americans built this city long before European arrival. Your quirky tidbit appears in a cloud of dust. An early amateur digger pulls a strange artifact from the earth, a shell bead carved with an intricate design. Early collectors often kept these as curiosities or sold them, unaware they were part of sacred or ceremonial contexts. Some even cut into mounds looking for treasure, treating ancient history like a piggy bank. Historians still argue about the scale and complexity of Cahokia's social system. Was it a centralized kingdom with a paramount chief, or a collection of interconnected villages sharing ceremonial spaces? Every shovel of dirt seemed to raise more questions than answers. You drift into a small excavation pit where modern archaeologists have replaced the early treasure hunters. They kneel with brushes and trowels, carefully uncovering fragments of pottery, stone tools, and tiny beads. A faint smell of damp clay rises as they work. Nearby, a researcher sketches Monk's Mound, its green slopes glowing in the afternoon sun. The wind lifts across the tall grass, carrying the sound of a distant train whistle. Modern life hums just outside this forgotten city, yet inside the site, time moves slowly, letting the whispers of the past surface grain by grain. You step up onto a mound and see the world spread before you. Highways in the distance, houses on the horizon, and at your feet, a story older than all of them, quietly enduring beneath the soil. Section 12. Evening falls once more over the quiet mounds, and you wander through Cahokia as it is today, a preserved whisper of its former self. The grass shimmers under the last golden light, rippling with the breeze like a slow heartbeat. A few interpretive signs dot the paths, and wooden staircases climb the side of Monk's Mound, guiding modern visitors up to a view once reserved for leaders and priests. You follow one of those paths, your footsteps soft on the wooden planks. At the summit, the Mississippi stretches in the distance, glinting like liquid bronze in the fading sun. Highways hum far away, a reminder that the world has moved on, yet the land beneath you remembers. This was once a city of thousands, a place of ceremony, trade, and ambition. Now it's a green ocean of quiet humps and dips, a story retold by wind and grass. Mainstream historical fact. Today, Cahokia Mounds is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most significant archaeological sites in North America. Its 80 surviving mounds, including Monk's Mound, are protected to preserve the memory of this pre-Columbian metropolis. Visitors walk the same paths that once carried baskets of soil and the footsteps of priests and traders. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some modern visitors report feeling a strange calm or presence at the site, as if the mounds themselves are watching. While science can't measure such feelings, archaeologists have noted that the acoustics of the plazas and mounds create natural amplification for footsteps and voices, lending the place a subtle, otherworldly echo. Historians still argue how much of Cahokia's legacy influenced later native cultures and how many stories were lost forever. But standing here in the twilight, you can sense the threads of memory connecting past and present, a soft reminder that human dreams always leave a footprint, even if it's made of dirt and time. The sky deepens to indigo. Crickets take over the night shift, and the air cools against your skin. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the city alive again. The crackle of fires, the laughter of children, the low hum of drums from Woodhenge. Then the sound fades, leaving only the soft swish of the grass and the far-off call of a nightbird. As you take one last slow look across the floodplain, the mounds become silhouettes against the horizon. The world feels hushed, wrapped in a blanket of history and night. Every blade of grass seems to sway in rhythm with the breath of the land, and the Mississippi carries a muted song just beyond hearing. Your footsteps grow slower, softer, until they blend with the wind and the faint rustle of leaves. The weight of the city's story settles on you, not heavy but comforting, a reminder that lives were lived here, dreams were built here, and time has folded them gently into the earth. In the distance, the lights of modern life flicker faintly, but up here, surrounded by ancient humps of earth and the soft perfume of damp grass, it feels like you've stepped out of the clock entirely. You take a deep breath, letting it out slowly. The tension in your shoulders eases. Your eyes grow heavy. You imagine the mounds holding your secrets as they've held 1,000 years of whispers, cradling you in the slow heartbeat of the land. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the echo of footsteps long gone, the hum of drums, the quiet murmur of a city that once refused to sleep. Now, though, Cahokia slumbers, and it invites you to do the same. So drift a little deeper. Let the story fade into the night air, soft and warm. The grass sways, the river whispers, and the lost city of Cahokia keeps its patient watch beneath the stars.